In the quirky romantic tale Wolf Mates, An American Werewolf in Hoboken, JC Jensen finds herself inexplicably drawn to the least likely candidate for adoption at the local animal shelter, a fierce, unkempt creature rumored to be part wolf. Despite the warnings of the pound attendant and the animal's menacing demeanor, JC senses a connection and names him Fluffy, a moniker that amuses and irritates the beast equally. Unbeknownst to JC, Fluffy is actually Max, a werewolf struggling with his identity and a prophecy that has destined JC as his life mate. After a series of events that lead to JC taking him home, Max, in his human form, becomes her attractive and enigmatic neighbor, igniting a passionate yet complicated relationship. Their initial encounters are charged with sexual tension, as JC, a smart and independent woman, tries to resist Max's allure while dealing with her newfound knowledge of the supernatural world. Max, torn between fulfilling his destiny and respecting JC's free will, struggles to reveal his true self without scaring her away. As their bond deepens, JC grapples with the disappearance of her beloved dog, Fluffy, unaware that he and Max are one and the same. The emotional turmoil pushes JC to confront her feelings for Max, who is equally invested in making their relationship work despite the challenges posed by his secret. Throughout the novel, JC's humorous internal monologues and Max's internal struggle to adapt to his human life provide a comedic balance to the supernatural romance. The story takes a dramatic turn when JC discovers the truth about Fluffy/Max, leading to a climax where she must decide whether to accept Max for who he is or let him go. Wolf Mates combines humor, romance, and the paranormal in a unique blend, exploring themes of acceptance, love, and the lengths one will go to protect the ones they cherish. Set against the backdrop of Hoboken, the novel showcases a world where werewolves and humans coexist, and finding one's soulmate can be as unexpected as falling for a beastly dog named Fluffy. Chapter 1. Jesus Christ, in a miniskirt, he's ugly, huh? JC Jensen stood in front of the large metal cage, skeptically eyeing the unkempt beast who stared with defiance right back at her. She estimated he must stand at least 6 foot when he was on his hind legs. JC wrinkled her nose. He smelled too. The whole damn place smelled. Yuck. Well, yeah, lady, he sure ain't of the cute and cuddly, come here snookums, come sit on my lap variety. And none too friendly either. The nice man at the pound should never try his hand at selling cars, she mused. The overgrown, odd-looking beast sent out a low, menacing growl as if to validate the attendant's accusation. His teeth, or maybe a better word was fangs, were kind of yellow. Oral hygiene obviously wasn't his forte or his prior owners. JC couldn't put her finger on what drew her to this mangy mutt. There were dozens of cute, cuddly balls of fluff in the joint, all barking for her attention. Damn, she hated this. She wanted every last frickin' one, but knew she homed in on the meanest of the lot, knowing full well his chances for adoption were like zilch. He was a filthy mess and downright mean-looking, but when she let her fingers curl into the small openings of the cage, he'd sniffed the air with interest. Then he'd come closer, pressing his cold, wet nose against her finger. Oddly, she felt no fear, thought she probably should, but she didn't. Rather, she felt her heart lurch and a strange sense of tranquility. How'd he get here? She wondered aloud, running a slow finger under the monster's chin. He's a stray. No wonder. Look at him, for Christ's sake. He's mean and ugly. Found him cornered in an alley. Animal control came and got him. I heard that. Was Dakota Cassidy. Wolf Mates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. Back. Some fight trying to get him into the van even after the dart gun. They say he might be part wolf. I say he's part ornery. He's overstayed his welcome now. He's officially on his last day of death row. JC's stomach did a nosedive. Euthanasia? Put him to sleep, nipped the old ticker in the bud. Lights out. For good. They were going to kill him. Crap. She didn't need a dog. Her life was so busy she was never home. But when she was home, she came home to nothing. It was becoming lonelier by the year. She should walk away now and find a nice kitten. They took care of themselves and didn't need a whole lot of maintenance. They amused themselves with thread or something. An even bigger plus, they cleaned themselves. They sat in your lap and snuggled with you. JC couldn't fathom this monster sitting in her lap. Something about this mutt's eyes, dark and earnest, made her think twice about the feline persuasion. He nudged her hand lightly and she cupped his chin through the cage, scratching the underside of his jaw. His gray fur was matted, and probably had a village of fleas starting up their own boy band in it. You are one mighty fine mess. JC cocked her head at the piercing gaze he pinned her with. Her heart sped up when he licked at the palm of her hand. Shit, he was as ugly as the day was long. Bigger than a Clydesdale and in desperate need of some doggy deodorant. He's also destined to die, JC. Oh, all right already. She examined him one last time. Geez Louise, he was but ugly. But she couldn't bear the idea that he was due for old Sparky. It must be love. I've never seen him act like this, the attendant noted, cutting into her thoughts. He's usually snarling and growling at anything that moves. You must have that. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American werewolf in Hoboken. / animal magnetism or something. Half the time we can't even get near him. The attendant moved closer to the cage. She felt the low vibration of tough guy's growl beneath her fingertips. She tapped his nose with the palm of her hand. Stop that right now. Phew. Want a home? You're going to have to chill out, buddy. Quit with the junkyard. Dog, act and behave. She sighed with resignation. Her mind was made up. Tell me, oh gnarly one, are you house-trained? Good gravy, she was such a sucker for a good case of hard-up. The practicality of bringing this beast back to her very small apartment was flat-out nuts. Yet, she found herself out in the reception area, signing the papers to adopt him. These days that entailed giving away your firstborn and paying the obligatory $50 to help out the shelter. Grabbing her purse and the leash they'd provided her with, she hooked it to his collar and gave him a tug. He planted his big ass firmly on the floor and refused to budge. Talk about looking a gift horse in the mouth. Ah, come on, you brute. I'm gonna take you home and feed you. What more could you want? Solemn brown eyes gazed back at her, unblinking. JC knelt beside him. God, he was huge and so friggin' hairy. Look, Cujo, I saved your life for crap's sake. Now don't make an ass out of me. Let's get the hell out of here. She tugged on the leash again, this time with a bit more force. Nothin'. The pretty blonde receptionist held up a bag of dog cookies from behind her. Perch at the desk. Looks like you could use one of these. He's been known to be difficult. Hey look, lassie, doggy treats. JC sniffed the interior of the bag. God, they smelled like an elephant's butt. She pasted a smile on her face and pulled one out. Wiggling it under his nose, she tried to entice him. He staunchly refused, defiantly turning his head away. JC dropped the leash and whispered in his pointy ear. His position shifted. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American werewolf in Hoboken. / almost as though he were really listening to her. Hooky, but I could just leave you here, you know? I mean, we could skip the warm fuzzy part. You know, that part where I take you home, bathe you, feed you, and let you sleep next to me on the floor beside my bed? Sorta like Timmy and Lassie together at last. We can totally skip that and shoot right to the part where they put you to sleep. She hissed her last words for emphasis. The mutt's massive backside miraculously lifted. His long snout nuzzled her hand before he walked toward the glass doors with a slow shuffle. Turning, he looked at her as if to say, "What are you waiting for?" JC followed him, chucking him under the chin. "'Bout damn time. Now come on. You beast. We need to get you home and get you a bath, but first we need to think of a name for you. How do you feel about pain in the ass?" "Okay, champ, it's bath time and don't even think about yanking my crank over this. You smell like death and there is no way you're sleeping in my bedroom, smelling like that. So let's get all the shitty stuff out of the way now and then I'll give you a nice bowl of that kibble we bought." She turned on the taps and added some of the flea dip that came so highly recommended for good measure. He arrogantly sniffed at her crotch, wedging his big snout between her thighs. "Stop that. I can't begin to imagine where those people at the pound got the notion you were unfriendly. I can't keep you off of me." She'd taken him to the local pet store where all the in-dogs went to get the necessary must-haves in life. He'd been unpleasant to say the least, baring his teeth at every man that passed them. The cute guy with the poodle didn't stand a snowball's chance in hell of getting past Cujo. Thankfully he'd maintained himself long enough to get a dog bowl and some dog food. She'd grabbed a cute doggy toothbrush as well to clean up those teeth. He'd sat rather stoically in the back seat of the car on the way home. Occasionally he sniffed her ear, making her giggle. He seemed content to take in his surroundings. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. / 11. watching the scenery fly by the car window. When they'd reached her apartment, she'd let him go, fully expecting he'd want to check out his new surroundings. As long as he didn't discover her new carpet with his leg in the air, she was good with it. However, he didn't explore much. In fact, he didn't leave her side at all. Now, in her tiny blue and yellow bathroom, he was literally going to have to be surgically removed from her ass. His massive gray body pensively sat on the bath mat, filling up the small tiled space. Man, Cujo, you really smell. Okay, lover, in you go. JC wrapped her arms around his bulky torso and yanked him into the tub. He didn't fight her, but he certainly wasn't helping matters. He sat stiff and unblinking as she sprayed him thoroughly with the showerhead, running her hands through the thick coat of hair. Nothing like wet dog to get those nasal passages open. JC yammered at him, speaking in soothing tones to keep him calm and still. Oh, look at you, sweetums, you're such a good boy. Here comes the smelly stuff. I have to let it sit on you for 15 minutes according to the bottle. Why do you say we get to know each other while we wait? She began, working up a soapy lather, scrubbing at his thick hair to cover all flea-riddled areas. Satisfied, she sat back on the toilet seat and scratched behind his ears to keep him occupied. He tilted his head, allowing her the best advantage to his happy spot. You know what I want to know, don't you? Where did you come from? I mean, did someone own you at one time, or were you just hatched? Was someone cruel and abusive to you? Her stomach churned at that. Leaning forward, she bracketed his muzzle between her hands, searching his warm brown eyes. That would really piss me off. I don't care how mean you are. You don't deserve to be abused over it. His big pink tongue swiped her nose. She made a face at him. That breath is a tough deal, Cujo. Good thing we got that toothbrush, huh? He reared his head back and turned away from her. Oh, don't go getting all defensive, silly. That dog food is supposed to help. With Dakota Cassidy, Wolfmates, an American Werewolf in Hoboken. /well, the bad breath thing too. Look, it's already time to rinse. Are you ready? 12 bath towels later, he was like a brand new dog. She worked diligently to loosen the mats in his hair and dug around under the bathroom sink for her blow dryer. Now don't get all freaked out on me, but I need to dry you so you won't catch a cold. Sit, okay. That was probably the wrong way to address him, but the big beast seemed to listen best if she took the more friendly approach. Again, he didn't budge, patiently waiting while she plugged in the dryer and got the new dog brush from her bag of purchases. While she attacked the task of drying him, JC did the high-pitched voice thing all those dog trainers said worked to ease a dog's fears. Not that he seemed to care much. He was pretty unimpressed by her efforts. Clean and dry, he was quite impressive. His dark gray fur lightened considerably with a good cleaning. Softer threads of black were now visible down the length of his back. The fur around his face was full and fluffy. If only she could get her own hair to do that. And he smelled 100 times better than he had an hour ago. Her beautician's hands primped and scrunched. Between you and me, kiddo, you have the most fabulous hair. And believe me when I tell you that compliment doesn't come easy from the best beautician in Hoboken. You are one big ball of fluff. Fluffy. I've got it. How do you feel about the name Fluffy? Never mind, you don't care, do you? Well, I love it, and it suits you, I think, with all of this hair you have. I hope you don't shed, Fluffy. JC threw her arms around his thick neck and gave him a squeeze, ignoring the odd rumble he made low in his throat. Chapter 2. Fluffy? Fluffy? He ticked the letters off mentally. This was the single most humiliating encounter he'd ever endured. Fluffy? Christ, was she out of her mind? Who named a dog of his size and stature Fluffy? A poodle made complete sense, even a chihuahua. He was not fucking Fluffy. Full with a thick coat, Fluffy, she'd made him look like an overgrown chia pet. Was it not enough that he'd had dog treats shoved under his nose and a leash slapped on his neck? To degrade him this way by giving him a name better suited to a bunny rabbit was almost more than he could bear. All the other doggies in the neighborhood would secretly laugh at him. Damn woman, if she wasn't so friggin' good looking. If her scent wasn't driving him out of his ever-lovin' mind, he'd pick up and go the hell home. However, his prophecy must be fulfilled, and she was apparently it. She sure as hell smelled like it. She looked like it too. She had the most gorgeous ass he'd ever seen. Her Firm, round breasts were nothing to scoff at either. And her hair a man could wrap around his fist as he came. Just touching her shoulders it fell in. Raven ringlets around her heart-shaped face. It would make a beautiful coat. Fluffy. Like hell. He was a freakin' man in what she thought. Was a dog's body was what he was. How long could a guy keep this up? Oh, and that sweetums crap was gonna stop. Dog? If he could spit right now he would. Instead he opted to give himself a good scratch. There were some finer aspects to this particular form. He could lick his own balls. He scratched again behind his ears. How the hell had he gotten fleas? In the damn pound, that's how. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /14. His ears finely tuned pricked to the sound of her voice. Did she say dinner? Shit, he was not eating that dog kibble bullshit. Yes, he was for now anyway. Until he could make himself known, unleash the man in him. Jesus, he sounded like a commercial for Viagra. With resignation, he shuffled down the hall to the kitchen to eat his dinner. An answer to the most ludicrous name in all of Hoboken. Fluffy. JC was scooping kibble into a bowl and working on cooking up a steak for her dinner when Fluffy squeezed himself between her and the table. Hey handsome, hungry? He sniffed her ass in response. Quit, would you? You don't need to sniff my ass. You already know who I am. I'm the girl responsible for that beautiful new hairdo you're sporting. Now, be a good boy and eat your dinner, and I'll eat mine. She smiled at him, rubbing the top of his head with the heel of her hand. Dinner for two, isn't it romantic? Pretty soon we'll be picking out a china pattern together. She set a place for herself. He stood beside the bowl sniffing the rim. This was god-awful. What did she call it? Some cheesy liver crap. He didn't care how many tender bite-sized nuggets they included. It sure as hell did not smell like real anything. The aroma of the steak under the broiler was breaking him. His stomach growled with discontent over his bowlful of kibble. He nudged a piece or two with his nose. See? It's good, isn't it? His eyes followed the steak as she pulled it out of the oven and set it on the counter. Yah! Real meat. His taste buds did the happy dance. The doorbell rang just as she was putting the finishing touches on her plate. Wiping her hands on a towel, she gave him the "don't screw with me" look. Now, listen up, Fluff, don't go getting all territorial on me here. It's probably just one of my friends. Believe me when I tell you men have not been beating down the door to my sexuality as Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /15. Of late. So chill out and eat your dinner. Got it. She scratched his ears and went to answer the door. Thank God. Now all he had to do was resist the temptation to stand on his hind legs and firmly sink his teeth into that tender steak. Hell, it smelled so good. Maybe if he just smelled it. Paws firmly planted on either side of the floured plate, he took a whiff. Holy T-bone. He needed this bad. He could just lick it. She'd never know. He raked his tongue over the salted surface. Hell. His instinctive nature to devour it was threatening to overwhelm him. If I just take a bite, well, of course she'd know he did. She'd scold him. And they could go on about their business. So he wouldn't get one of those doggy treats that tasted like shit on a shingle. Big deal, hit me where it hurts. One bite and no more. He clamped down on the meat, holding it with one paw, tearing just a small bite off the edge. Savoring the texture on his tongue, his stomach rejoiced. He was certain he heard angels sing hallelujah in the distance. It had been so long since he'd had a decent meal. It was a little overcooked for his liking, but who cared at this point? Dropping down off the counter, he attempted to fend off the temptation to gorge. He sniffed the bowl of kibble. No freaking way was he eating that. Her feelings would be hurt. She'd gone to so much trouble to pick just the right variety out. Reading the ingredients on the package, vitamins and protein, everything a good pet might want in an owner. He would not eat dog food and he was nobody's pet. Now if she wanted to pet him. He grabbed the bowl between his teeth and tipped it over behind the fridge, pushing it to the back with his paw. It was the best he could do for now. His stomach. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /16. Rumbled noisily again. That steak was calling his name. Well, it wasn't calling this new, utterly ridiculous dog name she'd given him, but calling him nonetheless. He could resist. He would just walk away. Shit, no he couldn't. Half, that's all he'd eat. Just half, it was too big for her anyway. Reason. Finding a comfortable spot, he rested his lower body against the cabinets and dug in. Half, only half, he reminded his overactive stomach. A screech laced with horror invaded his love affair with the steak. Floofy, what are you doing? She stomped toward him, clearly not pleased. His name is Fluffy? A male voice guffawed loudly. He's friggin' huge, JC. Shit. Foiled screwed, it was the doghouse for him. He slid guiltily from the counter, turning to identify the new male voice who'd entered the kitchen. His ears stood up attentively. Why thank you. He preened over the intruder's words. Yeah, he's huge all right and in a whole lot of trouble. He ate my steak. Well, not the whole steak, and who the hell is this anyway? His eyes landed on the dweeb who'd interrupted a perfectly good meal. Definitely not a member of the tall, dark, and handsome club. He had that beefed-up look about him. That meant he cared more about making his payment to the place he pumped iron in than he did about his girlfriend. His eyes were deeply set under a hawk-like forehead. Kinda beady if you asked him. Course no one would ask him. He was the dog. He sat back on his haunches and narrowed his eyes at the interloper, waiting. Grabbing JC by the arm, the man pulled her close to him. Listen. Forget the dog. Let's go out. I'll buy you dinner. She squirmed free of Muscle Man and rubbed her arms, moving closer to Fluffy. I appreciate it, Jess, but no thanks. I have a lot to do tonight. Like what? Hang out with this mutt. He hovered closer to JC, his thick body pushing Fluffy out of the way. Mutt? I'm sorry, did I hear that correctly? Wanna see my big mutt teeth? Asshole? He Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /17. Placed his bulk between them again and gave Jess a warning growl. Go lay down or something, would you? Jess nudged Fluffy hard with his knee and reached again for JC. Fluffy barked sharply in warning. This guy just didn't get the picture. Don't make me bring out the big gun, bud. Look, Jess, I'm tired. It's been a long day. I already made dinner and I don't want to go out. JC let her hand rest on Fluffy's back. He nuzzled it, staying close to her. I just don't get you, JC. We had a good thing going and now you want to throw it all away. Jess ran his finger down JC's cheek, but she shrugged him off. Yeah, we had a good thing going until you decided to stick your Mr. Happy where it didn't belong. Go home, Jess. It was only once, JC, and you know I was drunk. Of course you were /. That explains everything. It doesn't matter anymore, Jess. We broke up. It's over. Now go home. JC turned her back to him, looking over her plate. Apparently she was concentrating on what she might salvage of her half-eaten steak. Jess was obviously not accustomed to the word no. Come on, JC, let's try to work this out. I'll take you to your favorite restaurant and we can talk. He persisted in sliding his arms around her waist from behind as his hand grazed her breast. That's it, nobody grabs my woman's boob. Time for you to go. Fluffy growled. Just before he jumped on Jess' back. Standing as tall as Jess, he used his full weight to knock him forward. Jess reacted quickly by shoving Fluffy hard, knocking him to the ground. Get the fuck off me, you damn mutt, he snarled at him. It was over faster than it began. With one swift motion, Fluffy backed up against Jess, lifted his back leg and let go. A large yellow puddle formed on the tile of the kitchen. JC's eyes widened as she bit her lip to smother a giggle while Jess hopped around from foot to foot. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /teen. He peed on me. I'll fucking kill him. Jess yanked the dish towel from the rack and dabbed at his sodden jeans. His big ugly face wrinkled with disgust. JC began to laugh, the husky rumble making it all worthwhile for Fluffy. I really think you should go now, Jess. Fluffy doesn't like you much, do you? Fluff. He answered her by brushing up against her thighs protectively. Jess beat a hasty retreat, shooting a fierce look over his shoulder at Fluffy. Okay, JC, but you'll miss me when I'm gone. As if he hadn't threatened that a time or two. Well, don't worry. If I find myself overwrought with loneliness, I'm sure I'll be compelled to pick up the phone and call your cheating ass, JC called after him as the door slammed in her face. Looking down at Fluffy, she tugged his ear gently. You ate my steak. And saved your ass. Your very pretty ass. But I'll forgive you because you did get rid of Jess and he's not easy to get rid of. So I guess I'm not eating steak for dinner, am I? Well, hero, I think it's soup for me. Fluffy nuzzled her hand to show his remorse. His ears stood at attention, waiting for forgiveness. You beast. Listen here, sweetums, whatever I put in your bowl is yours. It's on a plate, you can be pretty sure it's mine unless the plate is on the floor. Got it. Well, he couldn't in all good conscience consent to that, now could he? He avoided her eyes and nuzzled her hand again instead. She smiled down at him, her blue almond-shaped eyes crinkled at the corners. I'm going to take that as a yes, Fluff. God, if only you were a man, you'd be perfect. He was sprawled out on the bed, his large paws tucked under her pillows. The blankets were a rumpled mess after he'd given himself a good back scratch. They smelled of her sweet scent, sunshine and cinnamon. Hey! JC patted his belly, just a little lower, and she was so there. No. She wasn't ready for that yet. He fought his lustful thoughts and slowly opened his eyes. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /19. With a yawn. This, she tapped the bed, is mine. Cookie. That, she pointed to the mat on the floor, is yours. He lifted his head to see her more clearly. She had a towel wrapped around her head and one wrapped around her body. Naked, she was naked beneath the blue towel. The gentle swell of her hip brushed up against his legs as she sat down next to him. Pouring lotion into her hands, JC smoothed it over her calves, working her way up to thighs he just knew were silky soft. He sniffed the air. Cucumber melon for sure. Her small hands made circular motions, rubbing in the cream higher and higher. Lowering the towel, she let it rest at her waist as she dabbed some of the lotion on her shoulders. Her breasts thrust upward, her taut nipples beating from the cool air. And what are you looking at? She chuckled. He turned his head guiltily. I told you to get on the floor, handsome. JC stood and pointed again to his bed. Fluffy slunk off the bed, sliding to the floor and curling his big body on the mat. Letting the towel fall to the floor, JC found her nightgown at the end of the bed and slid it over her creamy skin, the glow of the lamp shading her soft contours. His groin tightened and he tensed at the familiar call of his body to shift. He willed his muscles to relax and obey, focusing on remaining in his wolf form. Guess that could be bad. Hey JC, I'm the man. Your man. I just look extra furry right now. Don't worry, I clean up real nice. It was all he could do not to shift and show her he was no dog. Patience was required here. He didn't quite understand much more than JC was his prophesized mate. He felt her inside of him. He knew her soul. Now he had to find a way to get to know the rest of her without scaring the bejesus out of her. It wasn't going to be easy. Hey JC, glad you adopted me at the pound. Thanks for rescuing me from death row. By the way, did I mention I'm not just any wolf? I'm your wolf. Baby. Want a mate? Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /20. He really wanted to mate, and mate they would if he had anything to say about soon. Turning off the bedside lamp, JC scratched his muzzle before climbing over him and getting into bed. Her hand hung down over the edge of the mattress. He licked her palm, savoring the soft texture of her skin on his tongue. Night, Fluffy, she whispered to him, her sultry voice slicing through the velvety darkness. Good night. Chapter 5. Cut it out, Fluff. Stop yanking my crank and come on. You're going to the vet. Like it or not, especially after that little rendezvous last night. Did ya get laid? Fluffy cocked his head. Why yes I did indeed get laid. Because if you did, we could be in big trouble. Can you see the look on Mrs. Edwards' face if I have to explain how her chihuahua, Phoebe, got knocked up by you? JC shook her head as she tugged harder on the leash, dragging a reluctant Fluffy out the door and down the stairs. She glanced briefly at the apartment across the way, then tugged his collar more firmly, leading him the rest of the way down the stairs into her car. Methinks the lady digs me. That put a skip in Fluffy's stride as he followed behind JC and hopped into the back seat of her car. The vet's office wasn't so bad. Could be worse, sorta. When he'd heard her make the appointment on the phone this morning, he had to wonder if a rabies shot would hurt his human form, but then he didn't have a lot of choices short of shifting right before her very eyes. That might freak her, especially in light of last night. JC kissed the tip of his nose. You're a good boy, Snookums. Now behave when we get to the vet or you'll be in big doggy shit. Fluffy licked her nose in response. Yeah, good. He be good. Fluffy sat up and rested his head on JC's shoulder from the back seat of her small car, burying his nose in her hair. Damn, she smelled good. He couldn't wait for the day to be over so he could drag her back to his apartment and bury his nose elsewhere. Last night was equally explosive for him. He'd wanted to rip her clothes off and keep her naked until she Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /41. Screamed for mercy. Wait until she found out who he was. Then she'd really scream, but she'd adjust, he soothed himself. Finding out your dog was also your lover had to weird a chick out. Of course he wasn't a dog, he was a wolf. Somehow, he had to get her to come back home with him to the woods where his pack lived. He'd take it from there. Eva said it would be okay and he'd have to trust that. He also had to admit she was right even if she did prophesize from a bowl of chicken soup. He'd never felt the supposed bond his pack members spoke of until meeting JC. Now that he'd found his mate, he wasn't letting her go. As they pulled into the driveway of the vet's office, his stomach rumbled. He'd skipped his morning kibble and now he was paying for it. JC came around the car and popped the door open. Come on, handsome. Now I want a solemn promise you'll behave. This is a public outing. No growling, menacing showing of the teeth or biting. Hear me. She ruffled his ears and pulled him toward the door of the vet. Well, that pretty much left all of the good clean fun out of the question. He trotted behind her and refused to acknowledge the leash, averting his eyes. It was pink. Jesus, how did she get a pink leash? Was there no dignity? JC went to the reception desk while all of the nice doggies and kitties eyeballed him from the waiting area. As JC talked with the receptionist, Fluffy sat beside her and squirmed. If the other animals could talk, they'd make fun of him, he could sense it. Was it his hair? He caught a glimpse of it today in that full-length mirror JC had on the back of her door. It was Fluffy. Patrons of the vet in the waiting area scooped up their smaller animals and tucked them safely in their laps with wary looks directed at him. Good, this was as it should be, he thought. He was, after all, a wolf, as in the Red Riding Hood variety, and he'd chomp them all into little pieces if they dared crack Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /42. Wise. JC led him to an empty chair and grabbed a magazine, keeping the leash held tight in her hand. Fluffy slumped down to the floor and sighed. A rabies shot. Of all the indignities. A French poodle eyed him from the corner of the room. Fluffy eyed him back, staring him down. The toy poodle, in all his curly white, pink-bowed splendor, growled a warning. He wore a sweater that said Precious. Fluffy snorted. Yeah, okay, come on, Precious. You want a piece of this? Fluffy opened his mouth a bit and gave the delicate poodle with the stupid pink bows a gander at his teeth. The poodle backed away, cowering under his owner's chair with a yip in weak defense. That's right, back away from the big bad wolf slowly, bucko. A dachshund came trailing in, yipping and jumping beside his owner's feet. Unleashed. Fluffy buried his head under his paws to silence the sharp bark. God, they were yappy little beasts, neurotic, nervous balls of hair. A nose nudged his. Lifting his head, he stared into the soft, doe-like eyes of the dachshund. It backed away in a playful stance and barked again. Its auburn hair, shiny and long, bounced and behaved quite nicely, he mused. Must be nice to have such a manageable coat. Christ, could a guy get a break here? Wow, he's big, huh? The owner of the dachshund assessed Fluffy with a whistle. Fluffy would have smiled cockily if he could have. Why, yes, thank you. Indeed, I am big, and if you don't make your wee little friend get the fuck off me, I'm going to indulge in some dachshund delight. JC chuckled. Yes, he is big and he seems to like your dog, which based on his past performance is unusual. What a good boy, Fluffy. JC praised him. Yes, he was a good dog. Good. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /43. The little dachshund gnawed on one of Fluffy's ears contentedly. He wondered, absently, as he fought not to chomp on the critter's leg, if everyone in his pack had suffered this same humiliation on their life-mate quest. He didn't remember anyone coming home to the pack and regaling tales of trips to PetSmart or the vet. What's your dog's name? JC asked. The elderly man sat beside her. Killer. Killer? Killer? What the fuck was that? How did he end up with a name like Fluffy when this dog with ADHD had a name like Killer? This was grossly unjust. And your dog's name? Fluffy. The old man coughed, clearing his throat. Fluffy. He felt the whole room go silent, and then a twitter rippled through the crowded waiting room. They were mocking him. He could feel it right down to his doggy toes paws. He felt like a boy named Sue. He'd show them Fluffy all right. Fluffy sat up, knocking Killer off his back, sending him skittering sideways on the smooth tiled floor, and stiffened his spine like he was lord of the jungle, growling low and threatening. JC's foot gave him a nudge without breaking a stride in her conversation. Was a warning. Oh shit. Good / He was supposed to be good. Crap. He slumped back down, and Killer went to town on his ear again. JC Jensen and Fluffy? A pretty nurse from behind the reception desk called. She came around and popped her head out the door, and her eyes widened when she took in Fluffy. That's right, girlie. Be afraid, be very afraid. Come on, big guy. Let's go and you behave, JC admonished as she rose and tugged his pink leash. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /44. Fluffy strolled past all of the mean puppies who had silently mocked him, holding his head high. The nice nurse backed up against the door as far as she could as they passed her. He looked back at the crowd of shishifufu dogs, with their stupid sweaters and hair bows, and smirked as if to say, see how scary I am? Even the nurse is afraid of me. Fluffy trotted off behind JC, admiring her ass as they entered the examining room. He yawned and sat beside her, nuzzling her leg. When the doctor came in the door, he stopped dead in his tracks and gave Fluffy the once-over. Say it's right, document. Fluffy stuck his chest out. I mean and ugly, and I ain't afraid of you and your needles. Miss Jensen, I'm Dr. Jacobs. So this is Fluffy. When you said he was unusual, I didn't realize how unusual. JC's laugh tinkled through the sterile air. The animal shelter said he might be part wolf. Dr. Jacobs knelt in front of Fluffy and scratched his head. Hey, big guy. Fluffy eyed him nonchalantly. Hello, Dr. Jacobs. Nice to meet you. Could we do this thing? I'm hungry and I want to go home. Damn, he should have hunted last night instead of laying around thinking about JC. I think we're going to need help getting him on the scale, Dr. Jacobs commented as Fluffy caught him covertly eyeing JC's breasts. Well, like my woman, do you? The doctor poked his head out and called for assistance. A big burly woman with a mean-looking face pushed her way in and stood with her arms crossed, waiting to be instructed. Wait, they were going to pick him up and put him on the scale? Fluffy sucked in his gut. Shit. As Florence Nightingale grabbed him around his torso, he let his body go slack. Her flat, round face turned red as she huffed and puffed to schlep him over to the scale, plopping him down unceremoniously on the cool metal. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /45. Dr. Jacobs perused the scale, giving sidelong glances to JC's breasts. Wow. He's 150 pounds. Of lean, mean fighting machine, and don't you forget it. I think watching what he eats would be a good thing. He's not overweight, but I definitely say he's on the husky side and could run toward heavy. He's a big dog. You'll have to watch his hips. I'd ration his food carefully. He doesn't seem to like the food I chose for him. He's been dumping it behind the refrigerator, but he sure likes my steak, JC answered. Guilty, he thought. How the hell can a wolf live on kibble alone? A diet? He didn't need a frickin' diet. But he'd better watch his protein nonetheless. He didn't need hip trouble. How's his temperament? Is he difficult, lazy? Lazy, please. And difficult? Not a lot, just when asshole doctors are busy checking out my chick or her stupid ex-boyfriend shows up. JC grimaced as she came to stand by Fluffy. Well, he is very overprotective. And somehow he keeps getting out of the house. I think he likes to roam. Concerns me that he might get a disease. Dr. Jacobs pried Fluffy's mouth open with 2 fingers and frowned. Gingivitis, he mumbled. His teeth are pretty yellow. He could use a good cleaning. He did not either have gingivitis. Fluffy let out a low, resonant growl, because it was pissing him off that this guy's fingers were in his mouth, accusing him of bad oral hygiene. Dr. Jacobs jerked his hand out of Fluffy's mouth and watched him skeptically, for signs he might rip his hand off at the wrist. The thought grew in appeal. Well, there was just no pleasing this man, was there? He was too fat. His teeth were yellow. He should be on a diet. He was grouchy. He has fleas, Dr. Jacobs said. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /46. And to top it all off, he had fucking fleas. The mere thought made him use his hind leg to scratch furiously at his back. JC nodded. I bathed him when I brought him home and did one of those flea dips. Dr. Jacobs looked up and smiled at JC, his eyes sweeping over her lush body. You did the right thing by bringing him in. He needs his shots to begin with. And we can recommend a healthy diet. As to his roaming, well, that could be cured by neutering him. His testicles shrank, tucking themselves safely to his body to protect them from the scalpel. Hooky. No more, Dr. Jacobs. There will be no whacking off of the balls, thank you kindly. It was time to go home, or the nice doctor was going to get the surprise of the millennium when he shifted into human form and clocked him one right in his doctor-like face. I'll have to wait on something like that. It's really expensive, and this visit alone is costing a fortune, JC said. Finally, someone with a measure of sanity. Dr. Jacobs chuckled. I understand, he said as he patted Fluffy on his backside. We'll get you all set up. Vitamins, flea powder, toothbrush, the works. Now he needs his shots. Gerda, would you help me lift Fluffy to the examining table? Gerda scooped him up again and dumped him on the table. JC came to stand in front of him, giving him the opportunity to bury his snout in her breasts. Fluffy sighed contentedly. Dr. Jacobs grabbed the scruff of his neck. Hang on to him, would you, Gerda? Nurse Ratchet placed her arms around his torso and JC held his nose in the palm of her hands. It'll only hurt for a minute, Cujo. So behave, hear me. Behave, behave, behave. If he kept behaving, he'd have no nuts, he mused as the sharp sting of the needle penetrated his thick skin. Fuck it. That hurt. Fluffy let out a howl of discomfort, shrill and piercing. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /47. Dr. Jacobs held his ears. Good. He hoped they rang for days on end. Chapter 6. JC took Fluffy home and he collapsed on the floor of her bedroom, snoring softly. She smiled at his big body sprawled out in sleep. Poor thing, one trip to the vet and he was as meek as a kitten. She rubbed the top of his head with affection, then got up. Closing the bedroom door behind her, she set out to clean her apartment and forget about Max. He'd niggled at the back of her brain all day long, and now it was time to abolish him completely, with like cleansers and stuff. Her nipples tightened just thinking of him. Shit, what was she going to do? The man lived next door to her and she'd nailed him in less than 2 hours. He was going to label her the apartment house slut and move on to his next prey. Talk about easy. JC found some old sweats and a t-shirt, changed into them and dug under her kitchen sink to find her cleaning products. Like scrubbing the grout on the kitchen tile was going to wash away the memory of last night. She slammed the bucket full of hot water down on the floor and tied her hair back. No man was going to make her tingle like that. So there. Or was that no man had ever made her tingle like that before? Oh, what difference did it make? She'd done something totally out of character. And behaved like the apartment house slut in the process. There was no taking that back now. Hey, good lookin'. How goes it? A deep voice rumbled from her doorway. Damn. She really should remember to lock the friggin' door so lust evokers like Max couldn't get in. JC's heart skipped 2 beats and her legs wobbled from her position on the floor, which just happened to be ass end up. Good gravy. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /49. Without looking up, JC mumbled. Fine, thanks. Max came to stand over her, his boot-clad feet at her eye level. JC? Are we still not looking at me? He was a real brain surgeon. Max knelt down in front of her and propped her chin up with his finger. Answer me. Her eyes scanned his deep blue ones. Did one-night stands come back to have a two-night stand? Why do I need to look at you? Because you think I think you're loose. JC groaned. And what of it? Did they have to discuss it? Maybe do a little therapy as a couple over it? I'm cleaning my floor. I don't have time to think about whether you think I'm loose. Not really anyway. His lips moved closer to hers as he grazed them with a whisper of a kiss. JC's stomach did a nosedive and her loins joined it. I don't think you're loose. Do think you should come have dinner with me and we can get to know one another. Dinner? Where? In the den of iniquity across the way? Oh no, she was not going back to 2C. No way. Where? She asked tentatively. Max grinned and winked. My apartment. No. What time? Max nuzzled her jaw and avoided her ear. 6. Sex at 6 worked. Should I bring anything? Pulling her upward, he fit her body to his. Nope. Just you. And my libido? JC gulped. Okay. He smiled just before his mouth moved over hers and he slipped his tongue between her lips. JC's body had a will of its own as it molded to Max's, and she let the silky slip of tongue taste her own. A sigh escaped her. His kiss was like coming home to something she didn't fully understand and at the moment didn't care to ponder. It was familiar, yet new and unidentifiable. Her arms wrapped around his neck and her breasts strained against his hard chest. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. Backslevy. Ouch! Max yelped as he tore his lips from hers. His hand went to the back of his neck and he rubbed it. What's wrong? Max shrugged his shoulders and smiled again. Just a kink in my neck, which I assure you will be fine by the time you get to my place for dinner, and that means I have to go if I'm going to cook. JC couldn't help but laugh. Are you going to dial the pizza guy up again? He squeezed her one last time around the waist before letting her go. Hey, I can dial more than just the pizza guy. I have all sorts of takeout menus. You'll see, and I'll see you tonight, he said over his shoulder with a wink. Max shut the door behind him and JC sank to a kitchen chair, her knees weak and her thoughts fuzzy. There was just no resisting him. Max was virile and funny and hotter than molten lava, and she'd had the best sex of her life with him. What was a girl to do when he blatantly made his intentions clear? He wants to make you dinner, tramp. He didn't say anything about more sex. Well, why not? Was she unattractive? Did he just want to make up for being a cat and ripping her clothes off the night before by making her dinner? Was he a man-tramp with a conscience? That would suck. She didn't need a kiss-off meal, thank you. The phone rang, a sharp, shrill intrusion on her thoughts. Diving across the kitchen, JC grabbed it. Hello. It's Max. The man-tramp calling to cancel. JC tried to sound casual, like it didn't bother her at all. What's up? Could you leave the earrings off tonight? My eyes watered for an hour after you left. If he kept his lips to himself, he needn't worry now, need he? But she found herself chuckling instead and said, okay, no earrings. His deep rumble of a laugh came through the receiver. Cool. I'll see you at 6. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /51. By JC. JC hung up breathless and pissed at herself for agreeing to do anything. This was a kiss-off meal, then so be it. Better be good. Yak yak yak. Fluffy yawned and eyed the alarm clock on the bedside table. JC didn't quit talking to him like he was an Oprah episode she'd be late for their dinner date, and so would he. Good thing he'd snuck off and pre-ordered everything. His stomach growled, intruding on their little heart-to-heart. Christ, he could devour a stable full of steer. I don't know, Fluffy, what do you think? I mean, why would he want to make me dinner if he just wanted to make up for last night? JC sat at the edge of her bed and played with the edge of her red silky dress. Damn, she looked hot in it. This is nuts, don't you think, Fluff? We hardly know each other and I had sex with him. I never do things like that. I've never had a one-night stand. Good to know, now get over it because it's going to happen again and again. And again. Tonight if he could help it. But he's so incredibly magnetic. When I see Max, hear his voice, I'm drawn to him and I can't stop myself and I can't explain it. Fluffy stretched from his place on the floor and cocked his head toward her. I will not have sex with him again tonight. And that's a promise. What? No sex? Fluffy's ears perked up. Wait a minute here. No matter how sexy he is, I'm only asking to be hurt and I don't need that. He lives right across the hall. How will I feel when he dumps me and moves on to the next available woman? Oh, that was low. JC didn't even know him and she was making assumptions, and not very nice ones either. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /52. He was not a player. But he was in a hurry. According to Eva, if he didn't get a fire under his ass and present JC to the pack soon. That bad mojo thing was going to happen. None of it made sense to him, but he wasn't risking any bad karma. God knew the pack didn't need any trouble. They were in deep, just in misfits alone. Another thing he didn't have time to dwell on, being the alpha male of his pack, was nothing short of organized chaos. Flopping back on the bed, JC stared up at the ceiling. She didn't get her cute but in gear. He wouldn't have enough time to shift, let alone set the table. Enough of this. JC knew him all of one night and they'd done the wild thing for the better part of it. She was worried about something that she didn't quite understand, and he didn't have a lot of time to dwell on how to get her back to the pack while trying to make her understand. So he had to move quickly or he'd be life-mateless, and that was beginning to disturb him far more than he'd anticipated. Jumping up on the bed with his front paws, he licked her cheek, then headed for the door, signaling the need to go potty, as she called it. JC ruffled the top of his head. Okay, I'll walk you before I have to go to Max's. Will you be okay alone for a little while? Yeah, let's go already. He pranced on the floor and JC chuckled, snapping his leash onto his collar. When she opened the door to the apartment, he bolted, yanking free of her and running as fast as he could down the stairs. JC yelled after him, but he ignored her in favor of his opportunity to fly through the door just as someone else was coming in. Bad dog, he thought, no biscuits for you. He was going to be in a shit load of trouble when JC got home. Now he just needed to shift, shave and change. Oh, and brush his teeth so they wouldn't be yellow. Stupid vet. He couldn't help it that his wolf form had bad teeth. They worked just fine when he was gnawing on meat. Shaking off his brisk run, Max/Fluffy stopped in the alleyway under his apartment to shift. He clenched his teeth, gritting them. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /53. Nothing. Well, shit. Must be all the shifting getting to him. Okay, Max, my boy, focus. Think tall, dark and handsome. He willed himself to relax as the tension from his wolf form released in small bursts. The crunch of bone flexing and stretching took over. He busied himself thinking about JC until he stood erect and in human form. That was better. Max cracked his neck and looked down. Oops. Fuck, he was naked, and it was more than a little evident he'd been thinking of JC. Despite the cold night air, his little buddy didn't seem to feel the effects. Sighing, he climbed up the stairwell to his window and slipped into the warm apartment. Seeing the time on the microwave, he rushed to throw some plates and silverware on the table, then headed for the shower. He caught a glimpse of his reflection in the mirror and stopped to inspect his teeth. Pulling his lips back, he examined them. Max snorted. He did not have gingivitis. Chapter 8. JC began to feel the cool of the air and the drip of the ever-infamous wet spot, bringing with it the reality of what she'd done again. Her hand went to her eyes, covering them, and she bit her lip. Max let go of a long sigh. Now I know what you're thinking, JC. Cut it out, he said firmly. We made love again, and if I have it my way, we'll keep doing it. Oh God. This man was delusional. She was never coming back here again. Seer. She was, after all, really good at sticking to her guns, or his gun. Max tilted her chin up, turning her to look at him. Now don't start. I don't think you're loose, not even a little. I don't think you do anything that moves into this apartment building, and I'm not going to let you deny what's between us. So stop all of those thoughts that are racing through that pretty head of yours now. Man, he talked good game. And I am not talking good game. Your prickly cynicism troubles me, miss. Her tongue moved like it was mired in mud. Max, I don't do this sort of thing. I mean, we just met each other and I can't just go screwing men I hardly know and oh my God, she yelled, sitting up and ignoring the rush of semen from inside of her. We had unprotected sex, Max. JC scrambled to the edge of the bed, her stomach tight as panic settled in. Not once, but twice. JC jumped off the bed as if it burned her, taking the sheet with her, but Max followed close behind, following her to the bathroom. Oh Jesus Christ, in a mini skirt. How could she have been so fucking stupid? Max grabbed her by the shoulders and whipped her around to face him. His face was calm, and that only served to infuriate her more. I've been tested, JC. It's okay. Relax, it's not your cycle. Suddenly he clamped his mouth shut. Her answer came out on a high-pitched wheeze. How the fuck do you know? Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. Lexi. Anything about my cycle? Her cycle, he was right. She knew her menstrual cycle like she knew ice cream and potato chips around that time of the month. She just finished her period. Relief washed over her and then panic rose again as she realized Max couldn't know anything about her cycle. JC, he commanded loudly. Look at me and stop freaking out. I saw your calendar in the kitchen. I assumed the skull and crossbones sticker on it meant your period just passed. She began to laugh. That was exactly what it meant. Oh, thank the good Lord. JC leaned against him, sagging in relief. You're right, but we still shouldn't play with fire, she mumbled against his chest. His deep chuckle bounced off the walls in the bathroom. I promised to buy condoms. Now about this tramp theory you have going on. Cut it out. I don't do this as you call it either. That's the God's honest truth. So let's clean up and I want you to come back to bed with me. Tonight you're sleeping here. So when I wake up we can do this thing you don't do after knowing a guy only a couple of hours again. You are a very pushy man, Max, but I can't. Fluffy will be waiting for me. Max rolled his eyes at her. Did you leave the window open and some water out? For him. JC nodded. Good, because he probably won't come back until morning anyway. Now move that cute ass of yours, he commanded with a smile as he went to the sink and began rinsing a cloth. He handed it to her and turned to leave. You're not going anywhere, so let's go. The idea of sleeping near Max all night long held great appeal. The desire to lie pressed closely to him made her shiver. His forceful tone no longer cajoled her, and she found herself responding to his demands. Nobody told her what to do, but when Max had it made her feel strangely safe. JC cleaned up and wrapped the sheet around her, waddling back out to the bed, where Max lay sprawled out. He oozed sex appeal as he patted the bed. Come here. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /61. Woman now. JC had no will left to resist him as shaky, sex-weary legs carried her to the bed. Climbing in beside him, JC snuggled closer to his side as Max enveloped her in his strong embrace. Well, this was a-okay. He was warm and hard, and her neighbor that she'd known just over a day. Max shook her gently and chided. Stop thinking that. By tomorrow it'll be like you've always known me. Oh good, she thought as sleep crept in. That would cut out a lot of time consuming crap the getting to know you process presented. Oi. JC woke to the sound of Max's harsh, whispered hiss. I said okay, Derek. You know, I honestly don't know what you all would do if something really bad happened. Tell Eva to quit with the hissy fit. I'll be there later today, and then do me a favor? Tell her to stop eating so much damn chicken soup, otherwise I won't be able to keep up. I love her, but she's making me nuts with her prophecies. JC sat up with a bolt of energy. Who was Eva? Her eyes narrowed. Max had a woman, didn't he? Well, didn't that just figure? And she was sick because she was owning on chicken soup. Pig, pantywaist, jerk. JC was just about to blow his popsicle stand when Max bounded into the bedroom with a grin on his face and pounced on the bed beside her. She didn't even realize she'd dropped the sheet from her breasts as she said, through clenched teeth, Who's Eva, Max? Max leaned over and enveloped a nipple, teasing it to a tight point with a skill of his tongue. He dragged his tongue over it and JC moaned. My grandmother, he said after another hot lick. No, I'm not married. No, I don't have a girlfriend. Now quit, Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /62. Being so suspicious, and be quiet, because if I don't put this, he grabbed her hand and ran it over his cock, hard and pulsing. Between your legs, soon I'll explode. With that he pushed her back to the bed and sat between her legs on his haunches, spreading them wide. JC felt the heat of his gaze sweep over her naked flesh. Max leaned over her and kissed her, sliding his tongue between her lips just as he drove his cock into her. JC whimpered, welcoming the hard thrust by wrapping her legs around his waist and stroking his tongue with hers. Max's sinful groan against her mouth mingled with his carnal words. Christ, Jitty, you're tight and so wet, made JC's heart pound and her hips rock against his. It wasn't long before his forceful thrusts brought her to climax. Gentler release than last night. Burying her face in Max's neck, she inhaled the clean showered scent of him as he tensed within her and came to. When they both were able to breathe normally, Max's eyes sought hers. I have to take a ride back home. Wanna come? JC's heart thumped in her chest. Today? Max nibbled on her lower lip. Yep. To see your family? He grinned. Yep. What man asked you to go meet his family after only knowing each other for 2 days? I thought we might spend the rest of the weekend there. Come with me, it'll be fun. You'll love my family. But he lived in a cabin or something with no microwave or cable television. There were bugs where he lived. Icky bugs and maybe even spiders. JC fought a shudder from under him. I take it you're worried about the bugs and gross stuff, right? He chuckled. I promise to kiss it and make it all better if you get bitten. Well, sure, that made up for all the other gross stuff in the woods. JC liked the Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /63. City. She liked Hoboken and she liked her salon, but she liked Max almost as much. What could a couple of days hurt? But Fluffy, she couldn't leave him for 2 days. I can't leave Fluffy, Max. He needs to be walked and fed. As a matter of fact, I have to go home and check on him now. Phew, a narrow escape indeed. JC found she wasn't 100% sure she wanted to escape. I took care of him this morning. He came home. Relief overwhelmed her. Max nodded, his eyes crinkled in a smile. I told you he would. He came. Through the window, I guess. He ate, and when I left he was sleeping. See? All taken care of. JC pushed at his shoulders. He can't keep running away like this. I'm going to have to tie him to something if he doesn't cut it out. The vet said maybe neutering might help his wandering. Max snorted as he withdrew from her and headed to the bathroom. I think that would be cruel. He should breed if you ask me. He's magnificent. JC's heart swelled again. Max liked her dog and her dog liked Max. Why this mattered to her she couldn't say. She only knew it was like she'd always had. Fluffy, and it was important for the man she was involved with to like him too. Whoa. And no involvement with the man-tramp. But a trip to the country would be refreshing if Max was going, and how bad could it be to spend time with his family? Well, you wouldn't have to raise the puppies and find homes for them. I can only have one animal according to my lease, JC reminded him. JC heard the water running in the bathroom. Max popped his head out and smiled at her. Come on, I started the shower for you. You can think about coming with me while you take one. JC sighed happily. He'd started a shower for her. He was so different from any man she'd ever known. It made her all warm and fuzzy. It couldn't hurt to meet his family and spend the night. It wasn't like they were mating for life, right? The ride to Max's family's house was beautiful. As the city grew to a distant Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /64. Behind them, JC found she loved the multitude of trees that were now almost bare from the chill of fall. Max held her hand in his lap as he drove, and for JC it seemed like a natural extension of this relationship that had happened in 2 seconds flat. She couldn't put her finger on it, but it was right, at least for the moment. She'd decide for sure when it came to the icky bugs. She'd asked her upstairs neighbor to check for Fluffy. Max convinced her he'd be okay just overnight. As they pulled into the long driveway of his mother's house, JC began to get nervous. There wasn't much around these parts, was there? Not a blockbuster for miles. Did the pizza delivery guy even know how to get here? Though beautiful, it was very rural. How did you get coffee in the morning if you didn't have a 7-Eleven? They probably grew their own beans and crushed them in big tubs with their feet, like winemakers did. Max ran a finger down her cheek and leaned over to peck her on the lips. I know it's very different from Hoboken, but I think you'll like it. Come on, my mom can't wait to meet you. Max came around and let her out. JC wiped her sweaty palms on her jeans. You'd think she was meeting Attila the Hun. Breathing the cold, crisp air, she absently watched the spiral of smoke from the chimney on the large house. Was fantastic, just the house JC would want if it could be smack in the middle of Hoboken. Then she could sit on the big wraparound porch with her coffee and pizza just freshly delivered. The big oak door opened just as Max touched the handle, and a woman who looked a great deal like Max threw her arms around his neck. I've missed you, kiddo. Introduce me to your girlfriend and come inside. His girlfriend? Mom, this is JC. JC, meet Mom. JC smiled as they entered the big foyer. It smelled of cinnamon and apples. Hi, Mrs. Adams, it's nice to meet you. Mrs. Adams enveloped her in an embrace, wrapping her chubby arms around. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /65. JC's smaller frame. Just call me Mom. Max took JC's hand and pulled her away from his mother, leading her into the big kitchen. Mom, I've only just met JC. She might not be comfortable with calling you Mom just yet. She nodded her raven head, but her blue eyes smiled. She will be, she said, knowingly. Okay, what was wrong with this picture? JC wondered to herself. Max was hunkalicious. He must have brought women home all the time, but Mom sure was in a rush to hook him up. Either he really was a playboy and she was going through the I want grandchildren stage, or he had like some mental condition, and he wasn't the catch he pretended to be. Wouldn't that just figure? Nearly everything about him was as close to perfect as it could get. He had to have a glitch. JC found herself drawn to the big section of windows by the kitchen table. Had a window seat with cushions and pillows. She could curl up on it and read all day long given the opportunity. Peering out, she saw a dog fly past the window. Circling near the edge of the drive, he ran back up to the grassy area just under the window. He moved with the speed of lightning. Jesus, he looked a lot like Fluffy, just a shade or two darker. Max came to stand behind her, circling her waist. He looks just like Fluffy. You didn't tell me you had dogs. Max chuckled. I didn't have much time. We were otherwise engaged. I'm going to go see if I can find my brother. Will you be okay with Mom? JC thought about how much Fluffy would like it here. A place to run to his heart's desire. Acres and acres of it. I'll be fine. She seems very nice. Go ahead and find your brother. I'll help Mom. I told you, Derek, I haven't told her yet. How would you feel if you were JC? Max ran a hand through his thick thatch of hair and slumped down in the chair. Derek, Max's brother, nodded his understanding. I'm sure it's going to be Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /66. Hard for her to adjust. If you'd listened to Eva last year, you'd be all done now and have a pup or two. But no, you put it off and now. Look, you have to hurry up and mate so that we can get this pack in gear. Max hung his head. Granted, he didn't want to be tied down last year when Eva read this prophecy in her chicken soup. But now that he'd met JC, spent some time with her, he understood the calling the others spoke of. He wanted her. And he wanted her forever. Derek leaned forward. Tell me, brother, do you want to have that? He pointed out of the back window. To carry on our legacy? Max eyed his cousin Jerry from his chair. Poor Jerry, he just couldn't shift. Like the rest of them. He got stuck halfway between human and wolf form, and nothing helped. So most of the time he wandered around in his human form, but when the moon was full, look out. Jerry was out there howling. With the best of them, half man, half wolf. No matter how hard he struggled, fists clenched and brow dripping with sweat, when he tried to fully shift, he ended up looking like he was constipated. Which in Max's humble opinion was better than poor neutered Bo. Bo had been captured by the local animal rights activists and fixed. Max shifted in his seat uncomfortably, but Bo was okay with being neutered because he was gay. And then there was Hector. Hector hated to hunt. Hunting the small animals of the forest, as he put it, grossed him out. Shudder, shudder. Hector liked the little rabbits. He said they were cute and fluffy, and he had a whole pen full that were off limits to the rest of the family. He named them for Christ's sake. Hector was also a vegetarian. What kind of wolf didn't like meat? Wolves with issues, that's what kind. Max and Derek were the last of the pack with any hope of carrying it on. He loved his family, but they weren't your typical wolf pack. Not by any stretch of the imagination. They were a blend of anomalies, misfits to some. All of the other packs mocked them, and with good reason, Max supposed, but they were his pack, good, bad, or indifferent, and he'd do what it took to keep the line going. Dakota Cassidy. Wolfmates. An American Werewolf in Hoboken. /67. Look, Derek. I know I have to tell her. Imagine her shock when I shift for her. Not to mention the fact that she hates the woods. Derek scoffed, his chocolate brown hair shimmering as he shook his head in disgust. You know, Max, it would figure your life mate is someone who hates icky bugs. This is the most messed up bunch of wolves I've ever heard of. In all of wolf history, we have the only non-meat-eating homosexual afraid of small creatures, half man, half wolf. We're like the circus freak show. And all I have to say to you is, you'd better get your ass moving because we need some hope here, Max, and we're it. Derek's tone was derisive at best. He loved and hated the ill-formed pack he belonged to. Derek wanted to be free to roam and do as he pleased. He didn't believe in life mates. Unless it was Max's, then he was all for it because it meant he could screw whatever moved without fear of retribution. They were the most normal of the bunch, Max conceded. What do you want me to do, Derek? Go out there and shift for her. Tell her dog Fluffy is me? Jesus, she's going to think we're a bunch of loons. Derek got up from his chair and threw open the window. Hector, he yelled. Hector looked up and smiled, holding out the small bunny to show Derek. Would you put that damn thing away? Derek snarled at him, but Hector stuck his tongue out at him. Derek slapped his brother on the back. Bud, take another look outside. What about that doesn't speak loon to you? Hector cradled his beloved rabbit, stroking its head and whispering in its big floppy ear. Max heaved a heavy sigh. Yep, he needed to tell JC